everybody. As you can imagine, this talk is not completely independent from what Carol has presented before. As a matter of fact, it goes back 5 years, I think, when we were at the Synaesthesia conference in Moscow, and we were talking about these experiences. And when I came back to Bern, I'm, by the way, a cognitive psychologist. I had a new doctoral student starting in my lab, Romain Ghibellini, and there were a couple of weeks after he started when the pandemic hit. Originally, he wanted to do a PhD with experiments in memory, and because the situation was not clear at this time, we were talking about the experiences that Carol told me at the conference, and I asked him whether he would be interested to investigate hypnagogic state. And he was interested in sleep research in general, and I said, oh, well, that's a good idea. And we designed an online study, which was at that time possible. And actually, first of all, now I want to give you a brief overview of my talk. So I would like to introduce the hypnagogic state from the literature on sleep research. I would like to talk about the prevalence of these experiences in the general population and in synaesthesia. And I will present you 2 studies that we did. Both are online studies, and both are based on quite large samples. And then I will discuss the results and come to a couple of conclusions. So first, what is the hypnagogic state? I think you had a very nice introduction before. Hypnagogic state in general is seen as the transitional state between awake and sleep. What I have here is an overview of a cycle of sleep. So you can see when people fall asleep at the beginning of the night. Okay.
Because it's blocking the slide. There we go.
Thank you. So you have this phase where people fall asleep. This is between awake and sleep. You can see there are different sleep stages from 1 to 3. These are non-REM sleep stages, and then at some point there is REM sleep, rapid eye sleep, which means that this is the stage where people typically dream. And you can see during a night there are a couple of sleep stages, a couple of cycles of these sleep stages, and in the end, this is what here is presented in blue. There are hypnopompic states. That was also something that Carl referred to. Now, if you look at the literature, hypnagogic experience has typically been defined as a fleeting, involuntary, spontaneous mental content. In a recent review study, Laco et al. Have presented several possibilities. One is geometric forms. That is the kind of experiences that Carl was talking before. There are also possibilities for isolated images, for simple thoughts, and for fully fledged dreams. I also would like to add that in the meantime, it is clear that you can induce the content of hypnagogic states by different methods. First of all, it is possible that you are re-experiencing stuff that has happened to you before. And there are recent studies that present people during this state very subliminal or at the border of the perceptual threshold words, and it's often the case that people then report having had experiences in this respect. Now, when we look at the literature, there is also evidence that hypnagogic-like states can occur during other states than during sleep, so during meditation, but also during daydreaming and mind wandering. The research methods that are typically used are questionnaires, observations plus questionnaires, or kind of forced or serial awakening paradigms. I would like to show you a method that goes back to Edison, the inventor of the light bulb. He observed that for him, this transitional stage between sleep, between awake and sleep, is a phase of creativity. He often had the best idea during this drowsy state, and the method that he used to stay in this state was that when he was laying down, he had a large metal ball. So when he fell asleep, the metal ball dropped and he was awake again. And this method was adopted in the lab, so people come in to the lab and here they get a bottle to hold, and when they fall asleep or when they are in the transition, what happens is this. And this is when researchers start to interview the people and ask them what kind of experiences that they have, and this is what the information comes for that I showed you before. So this was kind of the result of a first literature review, and we also wanted to see, oops, it's stuck. I can come back here. Yes. With our research question. So when we looked at the literature, we found out that in terms of prevalence, how often are people reporting, nothing's going on anymore. Four minutes and 28 seconds.
It thinks there's no signal, it's not reading it.
Yeah, that's what it says.
Yeah, exactly.
So, what can we do? Well, okay, I can try to continue with our slides. It's a little bit a challenge for me.
Shut it down and start again, maybe? You had great slides.
Well, the problem is that nothing changes if I switch here.
You're speaking.
Well, no, I think I can continue without slides. You have to be very imaginative.
No problem.
So the research question, the first one was, how prevalent are hypnagogic experience in the general population? And when we looked at the literature, we found that these prevalence estimates, so prevalence means how many people report having these experiences, they vary widely. So from one study that reported 6% of the population, it goes up to 85% of the population. So it's a huge variability. And from discussing this topic with Carol, another research question was whether it might be more prevalent in synaesthesia. So that is what the starting point was for Roman's research. And we decided, when we designed a questionnaire, to assess the prevalence of the general population, because we thought if we want to compare synaesthetes to something, we have to have solid starting point. So we really wanted to do first a study with a solid method, and then use the same method for synesthetes to have comparability. We wanted to not only look at hypnagogic states, we also wanted to have a comparison to other states of consciousness, such as dreams, sleep paralysis, imagination, or extrasensory perception. So we designed a questionnaire which asked, first of all, for all the participants whether they experienced these kind of experiences, and we also asked them in what modality they experience this state of consciousness. So we had separate information for visual, auditory, kinesthetic, tactile, and gustatory, olfactory, and we could compare different consciousness phenomena. We also asked other questions, but I will focus on what I told you so far. The participants were 4,500, which we were able to recruit within a research class. And we presented this questionnaire online. Hypnagogic experiences were defined as vivid subjective perceptions that typically appear spontaneously at the transition between waking and sleeping. These perceptions can vary strongly. Here are some examples how hypnagogic experience can express themselves. Then visual, we presented an example. Actually, we presented a picture of Carol Steen. No, not of you. Auditory, hearing noises or voices. Tactile, kinesthetic, olfactory or gustatory. And we asked, have you ever experienced these states? The result of this population-based study was that we had 18% of the people reporting they have experienced these states. And interestingly, the frequency across modalities was that most people experienced them kinesthetically, so nearly 90% of those who had these experiences, 71% visual, 40% auditory, 38% tactile, and 25% olfactory, gustatory. And this is particularly important because in the literature so far, different modalities have not been addressed. So we really have evidence that it's not the visual modality that is more often concerned, it's the kinesthetic modality. We also asked separately whether they experienced hypnagogic or hypnopompic states, and it turned out hypnagogic were more frequent with 85% and hypnopompic with 47%, also nearly half of the people who experienced these states. We also asked whether they experienced the state during the day, and 1/3 of the people said yes, we do. So 34% were affirmative. So this was the starting point where we went further to address synesthetes, and we have a website which is now nearly 20 years going, so we have a lot of people who have signed up, and we asked them to take part on a study about consciousness phenomena, as we told, and we had an original sample of 1,700 people who took part in the study. We made some selection criteria which were age-based, because the general population study, we had an age range between 18 and 40 years, so we also only used people between 18 and 40 years from the synaesthesia study to avoid any age effects, and they had to have at least one self-declared form of synaesthesia. So the final sample was 997 people. Of these 907 people, 797 had a kind of grapheme color synesthesia, maybe combined with other forms of synesthesia, but all of them had grapheme color synesthesia. 200 other persons had any other form of synesthesia, but not grapheme color synesthesia. So sequence space or sound color, something like that. And we subdivided the group because we thought, well, maybe synesthesia really, depending on the kind of synesthesia, you will have other patterns in terms of a modality profile. The results showed that in fact the prevalence of hypnagogic states was higher in synesthetes. For grapheme color synesthetes, or for synesthetes having at least grapheme color synesthesia, there was 88%, which is 8% more than the control sample. And people with other forms of synesthesia was 84%, so it was between. And interestingly, when we looked at the profile across modality, this was nearly the same as in the general population. However, the curves were all a little bit higher, meaning that synesthetes in general had higher experiences in all modalities. But overall, the profile was the same, meaning most in the kinesthetic domain, then in the visual, in the auditory, and so on. Maybe this is really a pity that I cannot show you this picture, because this is a listing of where people, or when people during the day had these experiences. I really want to go quickly through those. I think is the most important. So people report during pain, during meditation, during sex, during daydreaming, during sleepiness. One said during a panic attack, during fever, during stress, taking a shower, staring into emptiness. So if we summarize these experiences, they are either when there is nothing else going on, or when there is strong emotion content. Further results, I want to go through this very quickly. We had group differences in the prevalence of sleep paralysis and extrasensory perception with higher scores in the synesthetes. No difference in the prevalence of dreams or imagery. And so to summarize, the prevalence of hypnagogic experiences generally high in the population, and it is even higher in synesthesia. The overall pattern across groups is similar, with most in the kinesthetic modality, followed by visual and auditory. And while strongest for synesthetes with grapheme color synesthesia, there was no synesthesia-specific pattern. So it's not the case that grapheme color synesthetes have more visual experiences, or sound color had more auditory experiences. That's kind of interesting, and this leads me to the end. So what is the functionality of the hypnagogic state? And there is now new research from the domain of sleep research that is focusing on the hypnagogic state, and there are two reasons. One goes back to Edison, that is, sleep onset is a creative sweet spot. There is recent evidence that people who are in the hypnagogic state and then given a creativity test, they score better than people who are not. And there is also evidence that the hypnagogic state is relevant for memory consolidation. So there are a lot of NAP studies going on now that demonstrate that this is also important to consolidate memories. And for me, I think this is really showing a link to creativity, to memory, and we know that in synesthesia there is an advantage in creativity, there is an advantage in memory, And so this kind of fits nice together. And so our next step, so that is for future research to have more information about the link, is to investigate participants with low imagery abilities, and this will be the next step. And I am now to the end. I wanted to show you a last slide where I thank you for your attention and for still being with me. So that's it. Thank you.
About this, but I get the impression that hypnagogic imagery is something very, very similar to dream imagery. And the reason I've drawn that inference is because people without imagery, without any voluntary imagery, they can have imagery, aphantasics, they can have imagery when they dream, and they can have imagery when they have hypnagogic states. And that's it. So I wonder if you know, how close you see it to dreaming, and I had a bit of a puzzle on the timeline, so I'm confused because when we do fall asleep, it takes a long time for us to start to dream, right? We have to enter REM state. So it's a little weird that that little blip before sleep has the same imagery as you get downstream in dreaming. And
actually, it's not the same imagery. So it is really the difference, and this is also a difference if you look at the EEG signature, for example. The hypnagogic states, they are short experiences. They are also very inconsistent in terms, they are changing fast. And dreams can go on for several minutes. This is not the case for hypnagogic experiences.
I see them as like mini dreams, like I dream, I get an image, I wake up, I dream, I get an image, I wake up, and then I fall asleep, but it takes another 20 odd minutes for me to get that proper dream.
There is a huge variability in hypnagogic states, how it can express. I mean, if you look at the pictures that Carol was showing before, you wouldn't say this is a dream.
Yeah, that's
right.
True.
And the other point, it's also an interesting point about the aphantasics, because it's exactly the direction that we are heading now.
Explain what that means.
There is also, it's interesting, it's also small proportion of the population, about 4%, who have no imagery, no visual imagery at least. There is not so much research about other modalities, so this is quite of a hot topic. There have been a lot of publication in the recent years. And the question whether these people have the same dream quality is disputed. So there has been a publication coming out about a month ago that makes a strong point, says, well, people with aphantasia, their quality of their dreams is not comparable. So the question is whether it's only voluntary imagery that is affected or involuntary as well. And so for me, it is really an interesting question, and I would, you can, maybe in 2 or 3 years you can come back to me, I would make the prediction that aphantasics have less hypnagogic experiences.
Okay, no?
Okay. Did you control for the quality, duration of sleep, method of waking up? And how do we get around the problem that synesthetes have a lifetime experience reflecting on their own experience of paying more attention, essentially, to the stuff that goes on?
Okay, there are a lot of questions in this question. First of all, I mean, this is a self-report study. And this is what we could do, so we have no information about the awakening paradigm. Well, yeah, I think there are a lot of questions to be addressed. This is what I can say from the study that we have done, but I completely agree that there are other things that would be interesting. I really like this Edison paradigm, because it is straight to the point. but we were not able to do this research like this.
The Oxford teacher.
I was scratching my head for a moment.
I'm sorry. I'm calling on the man wearing an Oxford sweatshirt. That's you.
Once we talked to City Hall, and he suggests that you have artists this kind of phenomenon exhibition, maybe with the scientists together one day. But City Hall, unfortunately, she does not appear. Yeah, unfortunately. And because we are talking about what I have is that two versions. First version is like abstract colorful painting. Colorful painting similar to my abstract painting. And second version is during the break. I have a black and white figures, mathematic figures, and the Kandinsky figure, and the Chinese old ancient calligraphy figures. Black and white, very beautiful. So there was a two here.
Okay. Yes.
Maybe we can.
I'm sorry, we're out of time. Pat, a fast question?
Okay, well, I notice I get hypnagogic imagery a lot when I live in New York City, when I'm on the subway, and it's a long subway ride, I start to fall asleep, and maybe this connects a little bit to what Julia's comment. I get, all these sort of geometric shapes and things, but then they just begin to form into images, as if a dream is beginning. But then I usually will wake up.
Exactly. No, it's a nice description. That's also what people told us, that during train riding they have these images. Yeah. So thank you again for being very imaginative.